second one has to do with the traditional role of women, which is to be primary caregiver of children. Okay, so what happens is that if you are looking at a situation where there is a single parent, it is more likely than not going to be a single mom rather than a single dad. So what even compounds this even worse is that when you look at the labor market, childcare right now actually costs so much that it doesn't even make sense for some people to put their kids in childcare because they don't earn enough to actually make a living wage and pay childcare. However, if you are a single mom, then you have no other choice. You have to earn money and also use daycare and take care of the kids as a financial burden. People is asked, well, what about child support? What you find generally is that child support is not enough, that it is not actually paid in most of the cases. So it's there, but it is not enough. Okay. So I'm showing you guys 2016 statistics just to keep it all consistent. And what you saw is that in 2016, the men's mean income is 52,000, and like I said, you can always know what the woman's mean income at that point is because it is going to be $10,000 less, so it's $42,000 a year. Okay, once again for full-time employed. I give you a lot of numbers right here, and I will quickly go over them, but they're in the slides, so don't worry too much about writing them down. Single-headed household with no kids, if you are a male, then the average income is $41,000. Single-headed household, no kids, that is female, then actually $31,000. Okay, and those are the cases. Actually, what did I say? So those are actually people without kids. So I don't know what I said before, and I don't know how to edit, so I'm not starting over again. So that single, no kids, on average for men, 41,000, for women, 31,000. In a double-headed household with kids, the mean for 2016 was $87,000. Okay. Now, you'd expect if you are a single parent that you would earn less than a double-headed household where you have two incomes. However, for male single-headed households with kids, then you are actually looking at, well, it is significantly less than $87,000, but it's not too bad because you are looking at $58,000 for a single dad who has kids. However, if you are a single mom with kids, then you make about $41,000 a year. Okay, it's depending on how many kids you have, it's actually not enough to make a living wage. And what I tell you guys, because a lot of people are like, but there are single dads out there. Yes, there are single dads out there and doing very admirable jobs and, you know, like I said, crushing it. However, 85% of single-headed households in America are headed by women. So we're basically saying that 15% of all single parents are single dads. It's not a significant number when you think about it overall, that it takes two people to make a child. So it should kind of be 50% each way. But because of how our society is constructed, then generally the children actually are relegated to the mom, and men then get to choose whether or not they come in and out of the kid's life. What does this mean? It means that of all people living under the poverty line, only 20% are men. That 80% of people living under the poverty line are women and their children. Okay. And when you think about that, it's actually a very, very staggering number to think about. And we actually see that kind of increasing probably over time as more and more people decide that marriage is not the solution, that cohabiting is not what they want to do. Okay. So what happens is that poverty then does become a gendered issue, especially if you are going to say, well, 80% women and their children. So the double-headed household with kids, you see that it's $87,000. So you think, well, that's actually a much better situation for women if they do have a partner. Then they're actually, the household makes more money. Slide 14 then actually talks to the discrepancy of household labor when you look at someone's workload. Now, one of the things that happened in the 1960s and 70s is that the feminist movement of that time actually prescribed, well, the best way for women to achieve equality is through working in the paid labor force. There was very much an emphasis on we need to make money, we need to have that power in order to kind of achieve equality. What happened as a byproduct, though, is that they didn't acknowledge that what goes on in the house, that household labor is intensive work, it's tedious, it's repetitive. You basically have to do it. That is, you have to have the dishes washed, you have to have clean clothes, etc. So what happened in the 80s is that women actually started entering the labor force, and at the time then there was all this concern that men would then be feminized and then become moms. And if you look at, there were a lot of movies then that ran on that theme. In the 80s, there was actually even a movie called Mr. Mom, and it was this idea that, well, his wife actually went to work, he didn't, and so he was completely emasculated and then became the mom. Well, Arlie Hochschild, who is a sociologist, in 1989 actually wanted to look into this idea. Well, if a married heterosexual couple then enters, both are in the labor force, who ends up doing the housework? Okay. So what she did was she actually interviewed these couples together. So they were married, heterosexual, and both of them were in the paid labor force. And when they were interviewed together, both members of the couple actually said, yes, we share our housework equally. Okay, that he does part of the work because I work, right? And I do part of the work because he works too, so we share it. What Hochschild did, though, is actually interview them separately about what they actually did. They also interviewed then the people surrounding them to see, well, then what was the labor split look like? And what she found, which is not surprising to people in 2020 because we already know this, is that the woman in the couple actually did the bulk of household labor. How does this work? Well, this is what how I explain it to my students. When you think of male household tasks, then, well, what are they, right? What do guys do when they're doing housework? And everyone always says the first one is take out the trash, right? Generally people say fix the car when it breaks down, fixing anything around the house if it breaks down, mowing the lawn, shoveling snow, grilling meat. That one comes up a lot, that they say, well, in terms of household labor, men grill. And it's always fascinating to me because only part of the meal involves grilling, right? So it's guys cook, but they basically just cook the meat on a fire outside. What happens is, well, these are actually infrequent jobs that don't take up that much time. I will argue that shoveling is no horrible labor, right? And that is done, but only during the winter months and up north. That is, I never actually understood what it meant to shovel a driveway until I moved up here. It's infrequent and small, and you can say, well, I do some of the work, I do half of the work in the house, but when it comes down to it, you take out the trash maybe once a day, and you take the trash out to the curb once a week. So when you think about that, it doesn't take that much time. Women, on the other hand, do the cooking, which is constant, right? And especially during this social isolation, what a lot of you have found is that you're just cooking nonstop because we all have to eat. So if you cook, then what is a result of that? Dirty dishes and pans, which then have to be done. For some of you, you're probably this whole social distancing thing, you're probably like, I am not doing anything but cooking and cleaning 90% of the time. That doing laundry, helping kids with their homework, soothing kids when they're upset or fall down, talking to your teenage kids about their social problems, a lot of that is relegated as women's work. So what Hope Shield found in the second shift is that, and it's called the second shift because women actually come home from their paid labor jobs to do a second shift of household labor. And what she found was essentially women in a 12-month year, that women actually do an additional month's worth of labor inside the house that is unpaid, right? So you look at those two things kind of entwined, you see this idea that if you are a single mom, then you can't win. If you are actually a married mom, that you can't win either. And studies have not yet come out about what happens in same-sex relationships in terms of household labor, but it would be a very interesting study to actually to see the results of. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and then finish up the rest of the gender lecture in the next video. And I always end these really awkwardly, so I'm just going to end it now.